I wanted to talk about the most powerful depiction of Christ that I've ever personally experienced. And it's this depiction right here on my wall. Ivan Kramskoi, who is a prominent Russian artist and leader of the Peredvishniki Wanderers movement, I'm not pronouncing that right, so the Russian speakers, you can correct me, began exploring the theme of Christ's temptation in the wilderness during the early 1860s. And this initial phase involved creating the first sketch of the composition, reflecting his interest in depicting Jesus, not as a divine figure in triumph, but as a human, experiencing profound internal conflict and moral struggle. By 1867, Kramskoi produced the first full version of the painting. However, he deemed it unsuccessful, primarily because the vertical format did not suit the composition. He later reworked the piece, shifting to a horizontal format and incorporating a stark, pallid, rocky desert landscape in the background to enhance the sense of isolation and introspection. This revision process culminated in the final oil-on-canvas version completed in 1872, measuring 184 centimeters by 214 centimeters. I was thinking about this particular time in history, 1872. Especially for modern artists, realistic art. The camera had already been invented about 10 or 15 years prior, and it wasn't mainstream and it wasn't all that good yet, but it was getting better. And I'm sure the artists at that time could see the writing on the wall for realism, so to speak. And it feels like we're in a very similar situation in relation to AI right now, feeling the technology bearing down upon the work, the art that we love. And Kramskoi detailed the early version and evolution of the painting in his letters to the writer Vsevolod Garshin. And reading some excerpts, the English translations, I found that it provided a great deal of insight into his creative struggles. He was really aiming to capture a pivotal moment of human decision-making amidst the greatest temptation. So there was a letter that he wrote circa 1871 on the initial conception in his first failed attempt. So the theme has haunted me since the early 1860s. I made the first sketch then, a vertical composition, Christ seated in contemplation, but it failed utterly. The format was wrong. It squeezed the figure, made it too static, like a saint in an icon, not a man wrestling with the devil's whispers. I burned most of the sketches in frustration. This is not about divine glory. It's the human Christ, alone after 40 days of fasting, deciding his path, to turn stones to bread or face the abyss. I want to show that moment of moral agony, where the weight of the world presses on one soul. Then a little bit later, in early 1872, Dear Vsevolod Mikhailovich, I've reworked it entirely, now horizontal, like the vast emptiness of the desert itself. The rocks are pallid, jagged, stretching to infinity, mirroring the chill in his veins. No halo, no ethereal light, just dawn's gray pallor on his face, eyes fixed not on heaven but inward, on the tempter's voice echoing in his mind. The first version was too confined, too vertical, like a pillar of virtue. This one breathes. The figure dominates yet yields to the wilderness. It's his humanity I seek, the doubt, the resolve forming like steel and fire. But is it Christ, or just a man I've conjured from my own doubts? Tell me, does it ring true, or am I chasing shadows? And then a letter in summer of 1872, a few months later. This is the vision that resolved the portrait. You asked how I found him, the face, that gaze which pierces yet withdraws. It came unbidden one evening last autumn. I wandered the fields beyond Petersburg, the air heavy with frost's approach, horror creeping in from the darkening woods. Suddenly there he was, not in a dream, but as real as the path under my feet, a figure seated on a boulder, head bowed, hands clasped in quiet fury, not triumphant, not broken, but choosing, against the tempter's promises of power, bread, glory. I felt such calm then. The personal torment lifted. I knew the end. He would rise not as God, but as man victorious over himself. This is my Christ, not the church's icon, but the one who fought as we all must. Does this make sense to you, or am I raving like the prophets of old? Then there's a letter dated after the first exhibition of the art, early 1873. Garshin had sent an anonymous letter to the press prompting public debate, and Kramskoi responds to Garshin privately, clarifying his intent. Your anonymous note stirred the pot. Good. They call him Hamlet, Don Quixote, even a mere wanderer. Fools, he's Christ or none at all. But you know my heart. It's the dawn of the 41st day. The devil departed, but his shadow lingering. Immense moral force, yes. Hatred of evil, resolved to fight without compromise. Yet sorrow too, for the path ahead is Calvary, not crowns. The Academy offers me a chair for this. I refuse. Better to wander with a paradvisniki than bow to their gilded cages. What say you? Does it move the soul or merely the eye? So I first saw this painting, I believe it was about 8 years ago. What captured me first was the face, the eyes. Man, those eyes are haunting. And next was the hands. And during that time, I was going through the most difficult time of my life and my Catholic conversion. My wife's uncle knew that I was captivated by this particular painting, and he got a print of it as a gift for me the Christmas before COVID. So I want to encourage you to do the same. Purchase a print of a painting that grabs you. And there are things that happen when you look at a powerful painting repeatedly over many years. There are things that I've personally noticed about this painting that I am now certain of, although I don't know if they've ever been officially documented. So I'm going to document them here now. So the first thing that became evident to me that I don't think is obvious is down here in the rocks. And I noticed this over time, that there's a vast difference in the level of detail of like rocks here and rocks here. It's like separating the left from the right, and there's a lot of the left-right dynamic going on here. So first thing I want to show you guys is if you look at this shape, so look at the shape of Jesus here. Now come down here and look at this shape right here. It's the exact same shape. So this rock down here is emblematic of the overall Jesus here. We got to remember, what is Christ in the wilderness all about? It's about him being tempted for 40 days and 40 nights. He's tempted by the devil. He's tempted by Satan. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. So what about this? What is this? This is the most starkly painted, gotta move this all the way over, most starkly detailed rock in the entire image. Let's see, I've got to draw a few other things here. This is clearly a nose hole. These are clearly eyes. There's an eye there and an eye there. This is the snake. This is definitely the serpent. And the serpent is targeting Jesus himself right there. A giant serpent, small Jesus. And you've got Jesus looking at the entire scene, really gazing at it with forceful intent. But it's more powerful than that because, so we got the serpent, we've got the figure of Christ in that rock. But then what's in front of the figure of Christ in that rock? What is this? This is the same shape as the serpent over here. It's the same exact shape. It's just cut. Well, it's cut. It's the severed head of the snake right here. I think he's tempting himself in the wilderness because, like Sun Tzu said, every battle is won before it's ever fought. He's preparing himself for these 40 days in the desert before the 3 years of his ministry. And the way Kramskoi details that it's day 41. So he sees himself in that battle with the snake, but he also sees himself as ultimately victorious over sin and death. So seeing that made me begin to pay attention to all the other rocks, all the other areas where there's some extreme level of detail. And as I mentioned, so the things on his left, so those are the evil things. Those are the goats. That's why Satan is on his left there. But the things on his right, so those are the redemptive things. And you see the rocks are far more detailed, far more fleshed out. It's almost like the way C.S. Lewis describes heaven, where everything's ultra real, ultra intense. And understanding this, that made me really start to pay attention to the stuff that's over here on the right-hand side. So let's zoom over there. So I think this right here, so that's the same shape, that's the same triangle shape, and I also think it's a Trinitarian symbol, him being a triangle. So I think this right here is the Sermon on the Mount. He's got a bunch of other little rocks all around. That's what I think it is. And then there's this little cave right here. This could be Calvary for all I know, and this could be, well, the tomb. But to be honest, I only noticed this right now. That's definitely a cave. I've also tried to think of what this is, because as it currently stands, I don't know. And it's clearly a rock that he painted with intent. And there's this hole there. I just don't know what this is. But if you have any ideas, please leave a comment below. The other thing I want to call out here is I've noticed on 2 different places in this painting. And because I noticed in 2 different places, it's not coincidence. So you have these 3 scratches right here. It look like almost fingernail scratches, and almost a 4th. It feels like it's 3 wanting to become 4. And the reason I noticed that there is because it's also up here. You have 3 scratches, or 3 or 4. It's like the 4th one is kind of faded, less obvious, but fingernail scratches where it's like you can tell he's clawing into the rock. And I think also here too, but it's less evident right there. And yeah, and also here, there's one right here. So it's like this, and another one over here. It's like this intensity of him grappling with his experience that I think Kramskoi is trying to convey. But I think there's more to it than that with like the 3 and the 4. It's like the 3, the Trinity wants to become 4. The last 2 things I want to mention, I'm still trying to figure both these out. Like in his forehead, this is something, maybe this is actually just the same shape as him, but it's also got this like little dimple or little thing next to it, because this is kind of a triangle shape right there in his forehead as he's considering. So you got the same shape in him, and you got this. I don't know, that in the middle of his forehead, there's something to that. I just don't know what it is. And then over on the right hand side, there's one more thing I want to call out. If we go over to this rock over here, all the way on the right, this right here. So this rock has something in it. Like this is carved into it, this triangle structure. It almost looks like a person. It looks like that's a head and this is a body down here. I think it's a person that's in the rock. And this is like a 90-degree angle. That's definitely deliberate in the painting. I had this idea that it might be Mary, the Mother of God in here, but I don't know. So that's it. That's my complete breakdown of this painting, all the things that I've personally noticed. So if you've noticed other things, if you want to make a comment, please leave one in the comments below. I want to end this video by saying, after making this video, after spending so much time on this painting, I feel I understand much better the human drive toward iconoclasm. I don't think I necessarily understand idolatry better, but I do think I understand the drive to iconoclasm. You know, it's always the things that are on the border that hit a little bit too close, that are on the edge. Are they in or are they out? Is it art or is it an icon? It's always those border cases that really make us the most uncomfortable. But that is what art is. The essence of art is to gaze, and I do mean gaze, directly into the border, to discern, to force a choice. That is the artistic act. And may God bless you and keep you.